is November 1, 2012, and we are sitting here, the whole family, and the patriarch of the Phil and Lavina Swintek family is sitting in the middle, because I am the patriarch, and these guys are going to do something that I did with Grandma and Grandpa Swintek probably 20 years ago at least now.
1991, Christmas Day.
1991. So that's 20 years ago plus. So I asked Mom and Dad questions and they answered, and so Sloan and Matt, ask away. Ask and I'll tell you if I'll answer or not.
Okay, what is your full name, age, and birth date?
Do I have to answer that?
Yes.
My name, the first name that I haven't used probably since high school, probably my freshman year of high school, is Gerald with a G, and I always use Jerry, and the middle name is Allen, A-L-L-E-N, and the famous S-C-H-W-I-E-N-T-E-C-H, Swintek, and age just past 78, and what was the other one?
When's your birth date?
Birth date is 6/21/34, the first day of summer, and this kid is the first day of spring, March 21.
Yep.
And where did you grow up?
In southeast Minneapolis, Minnesota, right close to Lake Hiawatha, where we could swim and fish and play golf and play virtually every sport known to man back then. We didn't have lacrosse and soccer back then. We had football. We played touch football at night, and we had a yellow football with black stripes around it, and we had lights down at the park, and we played touch football, and we shoveled off the basketball court all winter long and played basketball at the park. And it was a fantastic place and we had a golf course. So we had a fantastic place where my brother and I grew up as kids. And Grandma had a Boy Scout whistle, a real big metal whistle. And when it was time for lunch and time for dinner, she went out to the back porch and blew that whistle as loud as she could. And we came home for lunch and we came home for dinner. And the neat thing was she never had worried about us. We were at the park playing with a bunch of kids from our same block. And we never were beaten up by bullies. I guess maybe we were the bullies. My brother was a bully because he beat up on me.
I can relate.
That was the bully, was my brother, because he beat up on me. He was 2 years older and bigger and stronger. But I never gave up. I came back for more.
Now, while growing up, did you always attend Catholic schools?
All from grade school through high school.
And did you ever get a ruler to your hand? Or I seem to remember a story about an interesting priest who had a method of punishment that was
Fantastic.
And tell us about that.
Well, in grade school, we got hit across the hand with rulers by the nuns. In high school, they were like priests, they were Christian brothers, but they couldn't say mass, but they were Catholic teachers. And Brother Fabian, who I got lucky and had for homeroom in 9th grade, and the next year he got transferred, and we all thought we died and went to heaven. And guess who I got for my senior year? Brother Fabian was back, and I got him again for my senior year. But he had a goalie stick with the bottom part of it cut off. So the bottom had a handle that big, and the bottom was that big. And if two guys were messing around in class, he brought you up to the front of the class, you bent over the desk, and the guy you were talking with, he hit you. And if it wasn't hard enough, Brother Fabian says, harder. And if that wasn't hard enough, Brother Fabian said, harder. Well, by the time your ass was stinging and you got that paddle in that hand, you think you didn't hit that other guy? And Brother Fabian never touched anybody. He never laid a hand on us, but he kept us in line with his paddle. One day in the wintertime, our homeroom was in the old building. And I guess the old building had an old coal-fired furnace and was hard to heat, so there was a door right where our lockers were to go out of the building. In the wintertime, one door is the only door that opens. So virtually all of us went out that door at the end of the school day, and Brother Fabian happened to be watching. And the next day, there was 35 of us paraded up to the front desk, and he, one by one, paddled our ass for going out the wrong door in the dead of winter.
What a charmer.
We never went out that door again in the winter. That was high school. And then we had, those guys were tough. We had Brother Peter, he was about 6'4" and 300 pounds. And he was the hall monitor during lunchtime. And you got 300 guys running around. And they're not all calm, cool, and collective, and somebody would start something. And Brother Peter would come along and he would kick you in the ass, and you'd go about 6 foot down the aisle. And you always have to, before you started punching somebody, you have to look around and make sure Brother Peter wasn't around, or you were going to get it.
You're gonna get along with them.
But there was not a lot of funny stuff went on in the hallways, because you knew Brother Peter.
And what was the name of the high school?
De La Salle High School.
De La Salle?
Yeah, we were called the Islanders because it was on an island in the Mississippi River.
Wow.
And it was an island, and there, I don't know, maybe it was a mile long and a half mile wide, and that was it, and that was our nickname, was the De La Salle Islanders.
Wow.
Everybody knew who the Islanders were. We had great teams,
Okay.
all boys.
Did you ever sneak off to the girls' school?
Well, the girls' school wasn't close by.
Oh.
No, we were the only school on the island, so. But I took the streetcar to school every day.
Oh, wow.
Got out, walked up to one block and got on the streetcar. And the streetcar cost a dime. A dime would buy you 2 candy bars. Back in 1949, you could buy 2 candy bars with a dime. So it took us about a year to figure out, but when you took the streetcar, you could get a transfer, so you could get on another line to get you home. And they would punch the date on the transfer. So, let me hold this. So you had the transfer and you'd walk in and you'd put your thumb over the date and say, I keep it, I'm gonna transfer. And you'd cover up the date and you had another dime to buy 2 candy bars at lunchtime.
So in essence, you were a thief.
We were thieves, yeah. We did cheat the Minneapolis transit system out of a few dimes here and there.
So Sloan and I got in trouble for things that you did.
No, I never would have.
You never would have done anything like we have done.
No, I never would have accused you of anything that I wouldn't have done myself.
Yeah. The truth comes out.
But we had to get a new transfer because they were real cheap paper, and after a week you could see the thumbprint. The paper would turn yellow, so you have to get a new one now and then. They didn't last forever. So, and once in a while you'd get caught,
Yeah.
and then you'd have to put a dime in. Because
What-
what we do, instead of getting on the streetcar right at the school, we'd walk across the bridge. It was about 6 blocks to where we caught the other streetcar. So we walked from school to the other streetcar, and then we'd cover it up and say, we're gonna keep it, I need a transfer.
Now, after high school, what did you do?
After high school, I had 3 jobs. Got out of high school in June of 1952. And the first job I had was in a shop that made, in essence, air conditioners, but they were called chillers, just to keep air circulating in big buildings. And I was, I think, 5'4" or 5", and 124 pounds.
Wow.
And we had to take this big angle iron. Everything was made from scratch. Big brakes that you put the metal in and pull this thing down. And I was working with a bunch of guys that had been around there 10, 15 years. You know, good old boy, blue collar guys. So they always had fun breaking in the new kid. You know, and it was 50 cents an hour. Get me 50 or 60 cents an hour. Well, they had a half-inch drill, you know what? Well, but in those days it was this big, with 2 handles on it. And you had to drill holes in this angle iron that was that thick. And so they said, Jerry, you need we got those spots marked for you, you just drill the holes in there. And they're all standing there watching. And this little tiny shit gets in, grabs a hold of that thing, pushes down on that. Well, when the bit gets to the end, it more than likely will catch. And then the whole drill turns. And they're sitting there, it gets to the end, and I'm hanging onto that drill going around in a circle till I could shut it off. And they're laughing. They are laughing their ass off. They had more damn fun with that. I thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. You know they'd done it to guys before, so.
Yeah.
That was the first job, and I decided.
That was not for you?
After about 2 months, that wasn't my favorite thing to do in my plant. So when I was in high school, I took a mechanical drawing course, and I was pretty good at that. I have drawings in the house here someplace that I did. And so I found a place, an electrical firm that needed a draftsman to draw all these electrical circuits. Man, in 30 days I found out I sitting at that desk for 8 hours a day drawing on this paper, you know, nobody to talk to, nothing to do but draw this paper. I decided I didn't like that one. Well, fortunately in 1952, you know, jobs were not a gigantic problem to get. So I went down to Minneapolis Honeywell and applied for a job at Minneapolis Honeywell. Big, you know, they're still around today. They're a giant company. So again, I came in 5'4", 124 pounds, and back in those days, the factories were like 10 stories high. So they'd do this stuff to a part, and all the parts went in a box, and then it went over to an elevator and went up to Department C. And Department C worked on it, did some more to it, and went back into the elevator and up to another floor till these parts all came together and finally got finished. Well, all the young guys you've seen them at Home Depot or stuff, these carts that you just jack up the pallet and pull these carts. Well, the guy that was in charge of that department looked at me and decided maybe I wouldn't be able to pull those damn carts off and on the elevators and up and down the floors. So he decided that I could be a mail boy. We had a nice little cart about this wide and this high, and all the mail would come in and we'd stack it up for the different departments and offices, and we got to go up to the 9th floor where the president and the vice president and all the good-looking secretaries and everything worked. And, you know, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven, and I was getting 75 cents an hour there. And I was pushing this cart around and I could jaw with people as I'm going around and, you know. And then one night we decided we'd go out and have a couple beers, and we went out and had a couple beers and decided we'd all go down and join the Air Force the next day. And 5 of us did. 5 of my old grade school and high school buddies. We went down and signed up to go into the Air Force. And that was called, Glick state, it was called Green Death.
Green Death.
It came in a green bottle, and it was like 8% alcohol,
Oh,
you know. And in Minnesota, you needed to be 21 to drink.
And you weren't.
I was 18. I had turned 18 in June, and that was in March. So between June and March, I had 3 different jobs.
wow.
Because I didn't like the first 2 in the class, but I thought that was a lot of fun.
Did you stay with that job?
That's when I joined the Air Force.
Oh, okay.
And then I was gone. I had to quit.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let me stay once I signed up, because
Did you-
Korea was gone then.
Yeah.
And we decided, you know, probably be a better thing to be in the Air Force than in the Army.
Yeah.
So that was after high school.
And
And that,
And then you're in the Air Force. Tell us a little bit about the B-47 Stratojet, a little bit about some time you spent overseas that was not so pleasant, and some that was.
yeah. When I got out of high school, I had no concept of what I wanted to do or why, and you and he, you know, we talked the same thing, you know, said, you know, you can go to college, you can go to work, you can go into service, and I had, you know, after going through 3 jobs, I kind of figured I probably didn't want to be a mail boy the rest of my life. You know, even though it was fun at 18, it was probably not what I wanted to do at 38. So, you know, we eliminated that, and then the service came. And I've always said, and he's heard it, you probably have heard it too, that was really the best thing for me, that the best decision, one of the best decisions I ever made, because I grew up, I matured, and figured out what it I wanted to do with my life. But in the meantime, that 4 years in the service, that time frame, because in June the Korean War ended, so things got a little less military rigid. And what we were doing with the B-47s were, you know, well, that was our biggest weapon we had in the U.S. military, was the B-47. So we were kind of an elite corps. Strategic Air Command was an elite corps. And so we got to do a lot of things that other people didn't get to do. You know, nobody was on us to be all this strict military shit all the time. And, you know, we did our job, and we could go to town and do what we want to do and come back, and, you know, it was really you know, pay wasn't very good. It started out at $72 a month. A month. But I did have free room and board. Had a roof over my head and the food that I could eat. So, but it was really a neat experience that I really enjoyed it. And I got to be a crew chief on a B-47, which was, not everybody gets to do that. And we got to go to Upper Hayford, England for 45 days. And that was really a neat experience. Bob Doctor and I took a Cushman motor scooter with us. So when the day was over, work day was over, we jumped on the scooter and putted around Upper Hayford and Oxford, England, and got to London and to Trafalgar Square. And you know, the interesting thing that I think back on now, but that was 1954, and the war had only been over, you know, like 8.5 years. And in London, there were all these bombed out buildings that you know, there were still all
From World War
kinds of
II.
buildings that were destroyed from WW2, from the Germans lobbing their U-2s over on them. So, you know, that's kind of gave you a wow, you know. And then the other one, temporary duty, was to Thule, Greenland. And it was 41 degrees below zero the day we got there.
Wow.
And it was a freezing, frozen place. And we had a joke that, you know, out there, you know, if you had to go and the hangar was 500 yards away, you would pee a pile instead of a puddle. Because it would freeze.
Upon impact?
Freeze upon impact. So we peed a pile and not a puddle. But that
But
was
in
a,
Greenland, just real quick, so you were doing something
we were flying.
interesting.
Our planes were flying over Russia. That was when the Cold War was on. When we were always known to be the good guys. The U.S. didn't do bad things. The Russians might do bad things, but we were up there. Those planes were flying over Russia, taking pictures of the military installations in Russia.
Wow.
And that's what and probably the most interesting thing is that we all have to have top secret clearances to do this, because, you know, something you don't do and something you don't talk about. And we had our second squadron reunion, and a guy came with a videotape of our unit and what we were doing. And this was probably in the early 90s, probably in the early 90s. And we were all shocked to see this, because 90% of the people there had never talked about what we did outside of the same people that were in the squadron. But that's how secret people kept things. 30 years later,
Wow.
they had not talked about it to anybody. You know, there were guys that had been married when they were there doing it, and said, you know, I never talked to my wife about that. You know,
That's
it was just amazing to think that that the country meant so much that you were told you do not divulge anything of this to anybody. And for all those years, they kept it a secret. And I said, you know, that's pretty amazing
That
today
is.
to think that people could do that. But that was Thule, and that was service. And then it got down to the end of time in the service. 4 years, I was supposed to get out in March of '57. And I had made up my mind that I would like to go to Ohio State and when I get out.